there, and welcome to the Fearless Artist Podcast, where we empower classical musicians to build their own thriving careers. I'm your host, Lynne, and together with Deanna Petre, we teach artists to conquer the entrepreneurial side of their careers and create the futures they want. We are two freelance classical musicians who have lived and worked in Europe for a decade, and together we started the Fearless Artist Mastermind, a coaching company created to teach classical musicians how to overcome fear and take action on building their dream careers. In each episode, we will explore the intersection of artistry and entrepreneurship, teaching you the fearless mindset with practical steps and strategies to build a sustainable career. Get ready to build your own artistic brand, find a supportive community of musicians so that you don't have to figure out everything alone, and earn a living that you deserve. We believe that you can be a thriving artist and not a starving one, and we are redefining what it means to be a classical musician in the modern era. Welcome, everybody, to the Fearless Artist Podcast. My name is Lynne, and today I'm really happy to have Dawson White on the podcast. Dawson, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So we connected on Instagram because I found your page and I was instantly excited about what you're doing. You have your own company called Aspire Music, and you work with musicians very similar to our community to help them build their own careers. So I'd love you to just share a little bit about what you do and most of all, how you got started.
Yeah, sure. So Aspire Music Company started about 3 years ago, and it started from a place of real frustration. And I think a lot of people, especially musicians, were sitting around in the pandemic wondering, what are we doing? And what should we do next? And for me, it was a really good opportunity to look at my health, look backwards, because I'm such a forward person that I needed a chance to look backwards. And I realized I was missing performance, but I wasn't missing my career. And I also had developed some autoimmune diseases that were really wreaking havoc on my health. And so all of these frustrations led me to start this company. And it was basically a search for how to manage myself better. I was having to manage my health at a higher level, but I just needed to do that for my career, for my relationships, my family, friends, all these things. And so it started from that place, really.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're mentioning health. I mean, everything you're sharing sounds really serious. I think musicians are learning as we get out of school and more into our older age that we need to take care of all of the areas of our life, and that it's very difficult to balance this portfolio career, as we like to call it, because from what I understand, you have a very active performing career as well. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day looked like that was before the pandemic.
I was playing full-time with the Houston Grand Opera and the Houston Ballet orchestras, which is very intense. And, especially as a viola player, it's a very awkward instrument. And playing these 5.5-hour operas, and ballets that are extremely long as well. Incredible art forms and great groups in their own respect. But in order to have the living that I wanted in Houston, I had to stack that with teaching. So I was teaching at colleges around town. I was starting nonprofits because I'm very entrepreneurial, and I had a private studio. And it wasn't any one area that was the problem. It was the collective lifestyle that I had as a result. So it became very toxic for me.
Yeah. And I think that resonates with so many people listening, because what you're describing, I mean, the performing, the teaching, but also the running around to rehearsals with different organizations, different projects. So that's constantly I think we also don't talk a lot about all the energy it takes to interact with all of these different people all the time. If you have a regular 9 to 5, you show up, your colleagues, your boss, you kind of have this, people group that you're used to working with. And for someone like you're constantly interacting with different people. You've got 5.5 hours of playing. I mean, I know from Deanna that the viola is really awkward. She's talked to me a lot about the knots and stuff in her back. So I can't imagine what you guys are going through. So then the pandemic happens, and you said you were frustrated during that time. So were you thinking already, what am I going to do after the confinement is over? What was your thought process?
Yeah, I think it was a constellation of thoughts over kind of that whole year. And I also had jumped into my doctorate at the same time. And I love these things. I actually love working. So I have to have all these boundaries for myself so that I won't work. I also just love knowledge. I love continuing to grow, and I'm really career focused. And that's always been a great source of motivation for me. So I think doing the doctorate was really interesting at that time, and it kept me busy in a good way. If I just sat still, I think I would have gone really crazy. So I jumped in, and it's a viola performance and music business and entrepreneurship DMA, actually.
No way. I didn't know that they did those. That is so cool.
Exactly. It's kind of a unique thing for the University of North Texas. They'd been building their music business program for a while, and that's one reason I jumped in. Basically, it's like a related field. 12 hours of your degree needs to be in something else, other than your major instrument. So I chose music business and entrepreneurship. So I was getting all this great information, being exposed to a completely different side in a different industry, really, that we tend to, as classical musicians, we tend to be so narrow in our focus, and we only
Yes.
listen to certain types of people with certain types of success. And so it was very interesting to go way over here and, read a book about how to franchise a business, which I mentioned to you before, the entrepreneurship myths. And so I just became influenced by all these interesting books, speakers, teachers, all these things. And I started to realize, that was happening while I was thinking about my career. And I decided that I should not have to pay in health to do what I love doing. And that's what it kind of felt like. My health got better in the pandemic because I wasn't playing. And then as soon as I got back to playing, all of the health issues started up again. So I realized I was sort of allergic. I say that funnily, but in a funny way, but kind of allergic to my career. It was toxic for me. So that's when I realized, especially getting out of the pandemic and starting to play again with all these business ideas rolling around in my head, that I need to manage my career at a much higher level. And I need to reframe what success actually is. Success is not having a certain position. It's having a certain life. And so that was this huge, huge shift for me.
Okay, wow, you just dropped two golden gems on us. I should not have to pay in health for my career. And success is not a position, it's having the life that I want.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we need to paste that on every billboard, because I've also gone through this journey of redefining success, because for my entire life it was, it's the faculty position and it's soloing concertos with the biggest orchestras in the world. And if you didn't get there, it's because you weren't good enough and you didn't practice hard enough and you didn't make it. And then I started to learn all of that is really fixed mindset. And I don't know, now that I'm older, I don't know if I would have been happy if I made it in that way, right? That's where the interesting question comes in. If you had actually achieved what you were told success was, would that have given you the satisfaction that you're looking for, the fulfillment, or now you're thriving, you're working with hundreds of musicians, you've got this really cool company, which we're going to talk about, and you're healthy. I think you're in a much better place. I mean, so this is building success. This is building fulfilling career that suits you and that suits your strengths. So, okay, I love this entrepreneurship thing you did. So then when did Aspire Music come into the picture?
Yeah, so Aspire Music came in, I'm trying to think. There was an opportunity I had. A friend of mine was creating a business called Artist Empowered. And that was an opportunity, for me to speak to musicians about some of the ideas that were brewing in my mind. And now I realize it was the prototype for Aspire Music Company. And in that Zoom session, I believe there were some high school musicians, there were college professors, there were colleagues and friends of mine who are pursuing auditions around the country. So it was a really big mix of people. And I was sharing with them these struggles. First of all, I started with the struggle, and there was this collective sigh of relief just by, a musician who has the success markers talking about how stressful it actually is to have those. Not that I'm, not thankful for those opportunities, but that the lifestyle that it can create can be very toxic. So that was the first moment that I realized this is a viable idea. And then I went through and parceled out what I've learned through my own journey and redefining success at its core. Basically we need to look inward, not always outward, to figure out what success means for us. So that was the prototype. And then after that, I started coaching one-on-one with good colleagues and friends in town, just to see how does it feel when I put the coaching hat on. And I've been coaching through students for many years and helping them get to great colleges and beyond. So it was so natural and so easy. And after a year of doing that, I found out that I love coaching just as much as viola playing. And it's because I was tapping into my why in both venues. And so then from there, I started to just continue building and building and building until I left my opera and ballet jobs and pursued Aspire Music full time. And now I still play with those organizations. I play with the Houston Symphony, but I get to choose my gigs now. And it's a very different lifestyle than I had before.
That is awesome, and a satisfying lifestyle where you get to find out you have a whole other set of skills and strengths that bring you a lot of fulfillment and your clients. And it's a very unique position because of your experience and your background and your musician performing lifestyle. You have a very clear understanding of what musicians need. Whereas if they just go to any coach who doesn't understand, we've heard many musicians say, yeah, I tried coaching that they didn't really get. Like, our problems are so specific. I think most people in my life who have, quote, normal jobs, they look and they're like, your life is so busy. It is so chaotic. How, you're doing too much. And you hear all this, opinion. And you then have to filter it. Like, do these people know what they're talking about? Are they projecting their own limitations on me? Are they maybe just talking out of fear because they could never handle a schedule like this? Do I actually need to pay attention and listen because they know what they're talking about? I mean, we got to filter through all this stuff. So if we have someone like you who's like, hey, I've been there. I went through this toxic period of my life. I found something that works. Let me help you. I mean, I think that is just such a healthy situation. I would like to go back to, you've mentioned stress markers. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Do you have concrete things in your life that tell you I'm out of bounds?
Yeah, actually, there are quite a few of them. And this all, I could maybe summarize it by saying, know yourself. And through autoimmune disease, you start to realize certain pain comes because you're doing certain things. So for me, it's all food related, usually. So if I eat certain types of food, it triggers one of the 3 autoimmune diseases. And so I started to become very aware of my body and cause and effect. If I eat this at this time, it's probably going to cause this issue. And so then I transferred that skill that I learned through my health journey. I transferred it to my career and said, if I work with these types of people, it tends to diminish my mental health. Or if I work for this amount of time, with this type of repertoire, it will diminish my physical health. Or if I have to drive an hour and a half and then perform, then that's going to diminish certain parts of my well-being. So I just transferred that skill over, and it became this like, wow, this whole thing is messed up. The whole system is broken.
Yeah, I love that. I love that analytical approach. It's kind of like 1 + 1 = 2 for you. You figured out what you need. You figure out how you function best. I love all this stuff about, self-improvement, 1% better. What's the optimization? It sounds like you have a really great awareness of how things run and how you feel your best. And that's what's led to you being able to handle now all of these different hats in your life.
Exactly. Yeah, I think one thing that musicians really lack right now is a systems approach. And I won't get into the philosophy of systems too much because it's actually really boring, in my opinion. But all we need to know, we are technicians. We look at all the details as musicians, and we rarely back up and say, what is broken in the system that I can actually fix? And so there is some analysis that needs to happen there. And it's not that you're not going to be successful overnight, but you can tinker day by day to make your move towards that success that you want. And so you find the stressors, you try to eliminate those when you can. You find the success markers, you reach for those, and you just keep doing that every single day with lots of action. And a year later, you're like, wait, I'm happy. I didn't even realize it. And that was kind of my experience of it.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah, you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to my work today. I'm looking forward to my schedule. I love this talk about systems. I mean, systems changed my life. It's the only way that I can handle what I'm doing between performing, basically full time and running TFA. And it doesn't cost me nearly as much energy as it did in the beginning when you have to get your systems set up and put all of this energy in, and it feels like it's never going to work, and you're making a ton of mistakes, and it's all confusing, and everything's a mess in your brain. And then somehow one day something clicks and the system runs on its own. And now, I mean, my example is I get a new date from Candlelight. They're like, can you be in Brussels on November 18th and play this program. And I forward that WhatsApp message that cost me 0.1 seconds. And within 3 days, my trades are booked, my hotel are booked, and my iCal's updated thanks to my beautiful assistant. And I'm just like, hands off. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm going to Bruges in 3 weeks. Okay, great. Like, I know it's handled. Now I can focus on what I need to do, which is getting on stage. So I love that you're mentioning this. Also, I had a system failure this morning when I left my laptop at my hotel. And I was 1 minute away from taking a train to Brussels without my laptop before luckily I looked in my bag. So then instead of going through this huge guilt trip like I would have in the past, I've been like, oh, I had a system failure. Like every time I walk through a doorway, I'm going through my mental checklist: dress, shoes, iPad, pedal, computer, so I'm like, your system failed, which means you're maybe overloaded. So now we need to take a step back and kind of see, like, do you need more rest? What's going on? So it's interesting that you're sharing this because that was my thought process. But in the past, I wouldn't have had this process to kind of evaluate from an analytical standpoint, like what went wrong and how can I prevent that next time?
Yeah, exactly. I love this system failure. That is the antidote to perfectionism, right? That it's not,
Oh, really? Who
if it,
said?
it can be like, especially in this case, like there's a system, it's usually broken for most people in many ways. And they do break like that. These things happen. But instead of saying, I did this and that, and therefore I'm terrible, and then our self-worth goes down because of it, instead it's a
Yep.
systems failure, right? Like the
Yes.
system is broken. So you have now moved that responsibility from like, I'm not perfect to, well, the system didn't work. And so I think that's extremely helpful. And one of the reasons we need to delegate and need to have systems is so that we can focus on the areas we really want to focus on. So I think that's a
Yes.
beautiful thing to think about, the systems failure.
That's so cool. Well, anyone who has a coaching with you, you can talk to them about their systems and go through all of that. I would love to mention the E-Myth book that you brought up in the beginning, because that book changed my life. I read it 5 years ago. And the manager, entrepreneurial, and the technician, maybe you can share how that's affected how you run things for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It keeps popping up every day, actually, this mindset shift of I'm a musician and I have to do everything. Like that's sort of the feeling that I had for many years is I'm a musician. I have to be the one that drives, practices, performs, teaches, organizes, does all of the things. And through that book, it helped me step back and say, I shouldn't do everything. I can't
Yeah.
do everything. And so the technician is how we're trained as musicians, the small details. We practice, we perform, we teach. Like these are the things that we know very well. And we are trained to zoom in to the atomic level on everything. But the problem with that mindset all the time is you start to notice errors everywhere all the time. Like in Houston, we had terrible streets. I know every pothole and I know the best and smoothest road to get around those potholes because I just can't stand it. And this is such a stupid thing to be mad about, right? Like it takes so much energy to think about that. So through my health journey, I started going into the manager mindset, which is how do I manage my health? How do I manage what's
Mm.
going in? And then what's going out? Like, food and energy is coming in, and then maybe pain is happening because of that, or my energy is going out. And how can I manage that in and out, basically? So the health journey actually helped me significantly with the manager mindset. So then I transferred that
Mm.
to my music business and music career and said, I have way too many gigs that I don't like. I have music that I don't like. I have people I don't enjoy playing with. And why am I doing this all the time? Because that is success. I'm in the technician mindset, which is just get
Mm.
gigs and do the thing I'm supposed to do. And that's what the technician does. But the manager says, wait, we have limited resources. We have limited
Yes.
energy. We need to optimize our income and our artistic fulfillment and our personal fulfillment all at the same time. So that is the manager mindset. And then the entrepreneur mindset is very easy for me. I love dreaming about, solving issues like the potholes
Mm.
and in the road. No, I'm kidding. But
Yeah.
basically, I love thinking of musicians and the future and how we can help musicians. And I started an orchestra, I started a chamber group, and I started a viola society at a very young age. So I've always been very entrepreneurial, but what I was missing was that middle manager to kind of figure out and speak between technician and entrepreneur. So that book really helped me just clarify those three roles, and that I had to operate in all three of them all the time.
Yeah, that is extremely helpful. As someone who struggled with the manager role for many years, because I think the fear is probably coming from a scarcity mindset. Like, no, I need to do everything and I can do it. I can do everything. What do you say to someone who says, pushes back on the manager idea or role, or doesn't want to be managed, or, that kind of, do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Nobody wants to do it. And even clients that are in my conscious self management program to learn how to manage themselves consciously still avoid it. And it's just because of the way we are wired as musicians. We are wired to zoom in. We're not wired
Yeah.
to zoom
Okay.
out and to see it. So what I say to them is, first of all, that you already do. You already do manage, even if you don't like it. Practicing, even though the act of practicing is technician, the fact that you schedule it out and you determine what you're going to practice is the manager mindset. Once you start to find other areas, either musical or non-musical, that where you're exercising this skill, you can then transfer that. Here's a good example. So one of my clients was just talking about, oh, I hate marketing. Like, marketing is so time intensive and it's hard to talk about myself. It's hard to hear what my audience wants and then me give them what they want in the form of content. And I said, it's chamber music. If you are in a group and you're listening to the first violin and then you're sending something back that mimics that, that is chamber music. We've been taught to do that. All you have to do is transfer that skill over to marketing. So somebody sends you like this pain point that you hear, then you send something out. I've dealt with that pain point. This is how I dealt with it. So this idea of transferring skills is extremely helpful for musicians to get out of technician mindset, I have found.
I just have to take a second and highlight your lateral thinking. It is so amazing to hear how you're taking something you learn in one area and then you apply it across the board. I think so many musicians need to learn this. I mean, it's so helpful to think, hey, I learned this in my health area. Now I can bring that into my music, or it's like taking something from the music world that you learn now. You can apply it to an area that feels unfamiliar. I think that kind of lateral thinking is so helpful. It also streamlines our processes. So not everything is starting from scratch. If you have to bring in a new area of your life, you're not reinventing a whole process. You're like, no, wait, I already think like this. I just need to apply that thinking to this new area.
Yes. And this comes from the abundance mindset that you're talking about. Like, this is one thing that I help my clients do is I actually help them list all of their skills. And it takes a while,
Yeah.
and there's so many. But once they see this, they're like, whoa, what do I do with this? I said, transfer them, or reinvent them, or don't do them if you don't like it. But you become abundant. You start to realize, oh, just because I don't work in the New York Phil doesn't mean I'm not abundant, right? So you can start saying, I have all these skills and I can start to transfer them to different areas for my clients' benefit, my students' benefit, audience's benefit, my own benefit. So I appreciate you bringing that up, though. That's how I make abundance tangible, basically, is looking at everything you actually have already.
Yeah, that's so good. I just finished reading Smart Cuts by Shane Snow, and he talks a lot about the power of lateral thinking. And so it was really struck me because, and my example is I started Instagram on my fitness account when 2017. I was building my fitness account. I took it really seriously. I posted every day. I made a bunch of friends, the girls doing the same workout program I was. And so then when I started TSA, I'm like, oh, I already know how to build community. I already know how to post about what I'm doing. I already know how to talk to an audience. I just have to do it in the music world, which, of course, then I had to overcome a whole bunch of imposters, limitations, all that stuff, because now I'm showing my piano playing and not my workout. But anyway, okay, please tell me with your Aspire Music clients, like what are some of the things that you're seeing, similar problems across the board that you help people with, or maybe some success stories that you could share?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've sort of highlighted the biggest issue already, which is this perfectionist. I mean, we talked about
Yeah.
it. A lot of people talk about it. For me, it's not just about talking about perfectionism, but having tangible ways to overcome it.
Yes.
And man, it's just crazy how this comes up. It comes up for my high school viola students. It comes up for freelance musicians that are my clients. It comes up with people in retirement, going into retirement as musicians that I work with. A client that I was working with that works at a major conservatory. Every single musician deals with it because we are taught to follow. We're literally taught to follow, especially string players, orchestral musicians. We are taught to follow. So then when you get into
Mm.
your career, you're like, wait, where's the conductor? I'm now the conductor. And you haven't been taught to conduct. You haven't been taught how to design your own career. And so that's usually what I work on with all my clients is getting into that mindset, this career design mindset, and having all these markers and metrics and boundaries so that you know what the heck you're doing, basically.
Mm.
And so I think that's the biggest theme that I see. And I can give you kind of a small but mighty success story that showcases how this carries out for a lot of clients. So I had this college professor that I worked with do my business, and his dream was to start a business selling his compositions online and arrangements. And a lot of musicians have this very, very deep goal and dream to do this. That's the entrepreneur that's like, hey, I would love to have this extra revenue stream, connect with more people, get my music out there, showcase my musicianship. But what stopped him every single time was a website, just creating a website. And,
Yeah.
it's easier now to create a website than ever, but we're talking about musicians. Musicians want to be perfect when they create their
Oh,
website,
no.
right? So
Yes. Yes.
the problem was for years, he kept coming back to this website idea and like hitting a brick wall. And it was like, maybe it's legal issues with copyright, or maybe it's the color and the font, or maybe it's this or that. And finally he came to me and wanted to work together on it. And I said, done is better than perfect. Just do it. And so, but here's the big thing is no matter what we did, if he was doing the web designing, he could not turn off his perfectionism brain. So we actually delegated that to a free service that creates websites for small businesses for free. And
Wow.
then all he had to do is tell them, I want this, I want that. And then he and I could work on the language and how to get your ideal clients to come buy these. And because you see, I'm staying in my zone of genius, helping him with language and the why and his business formation. He's working in his zone of genius, which is compositions. And then the web designer is in their zone of genius. But we're all working together to make this thing happen. So
Mm.
after just a couple months, he had this fully developed website. He now has a business. So it's a small but mighty example. Like you just have to get over that hurdle of perfectionism. And sometimes you just have to delegate it and have somebody to help you with it, which is what I helped him with. So I was really happy for him
That's
because now he has fulfillment, like personal fulfillment, artistic fulfillment, which he doesn't always receive from his college position. So it really helped amplify his portfolio.
That is such a great example. So many musicians get stuck, hung up on tech because it is overwhelming, and there are so many ways it can go wrong, and myself included. I built our website when I was in lockdown in my parents' trailer. I was in quarantine during 2020, and I went through Squarespace, and it wasn't pretty. It definitely wasn't, but I was definitely in that done is better than perfect mindset. And then 2 years later, when we had some money, we invested into a web designer, and they did a great job and redid our whole branding and everything. Went from there. So for us, it was really a journey of like, we're gonna embrace the suck. Brene Brown uses that phrase a lot.
Right.
Um, and the other really important thing is that most other people don't notice the things that all these musicians are obsessing over. Like the last 20% of like, oh, it's not good enough. Like most people are like, wow, a new website looks great. They don't see all the problems that we see. So then it just was another indication to me of how we obsess over things that don't ultimately matter or move the needle. And then once you do have resources, you can start to invest more. I just wanted to also ask you about that. How do your clients see investing? Because hiring a designer, many musicians might say, "Oh, but I don't want to put up the money."
Right. And this is actually one of the things I help musicians do is go from a $0 budget, essentially. So like I mentioned, the service that I recommend them to is free.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to say, come work with me with career coaching, and then here are hundreds of dollars worth of monthly things you need to buy. Eventually, yes,
Right.
but we have to find the best offer that they can create using their talents and their wine. And then we make sure that it's viable. We start generating income from that source, which then we invest back into the business, which then makes the website better and gets more clients. And so it creates this system, if you will, of income generation and artistic fulfillment and personal fulfillment so that they can start scaling beyond. I mean, this is what happened with me. I had to quit my full-time orchestra position so I could make more money and be happier,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a surprise to me because those are the secure positions. But I did this for myself too. Like I created my business. I did a prototype for free, basically. I started coaching one-on-one to see if it was viable. I started putting my story out there. Thousands of people started reaching out to me about it. I created a business around it. I systematized the program. But I kept investing the money back into the business to now I have 3 big programs. This is sort of like a phased approach where we start with $0 budget and we work from there up. And actually, I'll recommend another good book, which is The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur by Mike Michalowicz. Basically, the premise is if you only had one sheet of toilet paper, you would get very creative and you would use what you had. I know it's not the prettiest image, but with
That's funny.
business, it's basically using what you have. And usually what we have are all the skills, our network. We have a deep sense of like passion for music. So we tap into all of those things and then we outsource for free where we can. Maybe we hire a virtual assistant for $3 to $5 an hour overseas. And then from there, you can start making some real change.
I think everything you shared today is going to be so helpful. So thank you. Thank you for telling us your story. Thank you for sharing your process and how you've developed all of, I'm really impressed. I'd love to hear more about Aspire Music and definitely tell people how they can follow you, how they can work with you, how they can find you.
Yeah, sure. So I have a free Facebook group that I'd recommend everybody join, and it's specifically for music career design and management. That's the name, Musicians Career Design and Management on Facebook. And we have a lot of these conversations there. And then also I'm giving away a 30-minute coaching session for anybody that's interested. And that's just to remove all time and cost barriers for people to move to that next step. But you can also find me on Instagram at Music Aspires, and I'm on LinkedIn and everything else too. So
Dawson, that is so generous. So everybody reach out to Dawson. You can get a free 30 minutes with him. You can review all your systems. You can talk through anything that is keeping you back. Like if you're stuck on a website or you're stuck on something else, definitely reach out to him. If you had one takeaway for this episode, Dawson, do you know what it would be? One thing that people could put into action right now?
yeah, I think the biggest thing I can tell musicians is just go do it. Whatever the thing is that people are wanting to do, it's the simplest bit of advice, but just start. If you want a website, just start a website. And once you hit an issue, reach out to those around you who know how, or read up on it or whatever. We're extremely good at solving problems. We do it thousands of times a day in our music playing. So transfer that skill,
Yeah.
So just start and then refine. Start, then refine. Don't think of the refined version first.
That is unbelievably helpful. I love that. There's been so many gems today. So thank you for everything you've shared. Thanks for coming on. And everybody reach out and follow you. And I'd love to connect with you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Fearless Artist Podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to share this podcast with a friend. To join our membership or one of our coaching programs, visit our website at thefearlessartistmastermind.com. This episode was produced by Pokey Huang at PH Media Studios in New York City. We're Deanna and Michelle, encouraging you to create your own opportunities and to go after what you want. You have what it takes to build the career of your dreams. Until next time, be fearless.